Okay. Pronoun da, good afternoon, members, and welcome to this multi-locational special meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee being held in the Chamber, Penachta House, and via Microsoft Teams on Monday, the 30th of March 2026. Just to confirm that this meeting will be live streamed and recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images and audio of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council's website. If members lose connection during the meeting, please make every attempt to reconnect. However, the meeting will continue as long as it remains quorate. Committee services staff are always available and will be able to assist you to reconnect if necessary. Can I remind everyone that the Chair has the discretion to terminate or suspend the webcast if, in their opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings, or that continued webcasting might infringe the rights of any individual. The Chair also has the right to remove persons from the physical and from the digital meeting link if that is necessary. Members attending remotely, please leave on your cameras but mute your microphones, and members attending physically in the room will be picked up on the room microphones when you are called on to speak. Members and officers should only speak after the Chair has invited them to speak on an item. Today, we'll be using Microsoft Forms to vote on agenda items 3 and 4, where the voting poll will appear, and then members are asked to click on for, against, or abstain, and then click on Submit Vote. If you have any problems accessing the voting pop-up, please indicate, and we'll take your vote verbally. We'll now take a roll call of members who are present. Councillor Adams.
Present, Chair.
Diolch. Councillor Broughton Pettit.
Present, Chair.
Diolch. Councillor Chacken Dawson.
I'm present, Chair.
Yep, diolch. We've had apologies from Councillor Elizabeth Davis and Councillor Gary Enright. Councillor Geyer or Gay, apologies.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Taylor.
Yma Cadeirydd.
Diolch. And we've had apologies from the Vice Chair, Councillor Wright. Then lay members, Nigel Yates.
Present, Chair.
Viv Pearson.
Present, Chair.
Present, Chair.
Joe Williams.
Yma Cadeirydd. Diolch.
Diolch. And we've had apologies from Councillor Stenner. Okay, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and or prejudicial interests in respect of any items on this agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Please use hands up function to indicate if you have any such declarations. Can't see any, so we'll go straight on to agenda item 3, which is the Audit Wales Inquiries Return 2024-2025. And we'll be asked to endorse the response appended to this report. Leanne Sykes, I believe you're presenting this.
I'm happy to do an introduction.
I do apologise. I've got it written down here. Or is it someone from Audit Wales does it? Thank you, Leanne.
It's fine. So this report is to present Governance and Audit Committee with responses to the Audit Wales in relation to the inquiries around our management processes relating to financial reporting, the prevention and detection of fraud and compliance with laws and regulations in respect of disclosures in the 24-25 financial statements. And as you said, the recommendations are that Governance and Audit Committee is asked to endorse the response appended to this report.
Okay. I don't know whether anyone from Audit Wales has to say anything before I open it up to members for any queries, questions, that sort of thing.
Just to confirm, Chair, that we take this into account as part of our audit. So we go through each of the replies and assess, consider what that means for our audit. And in this instance, it gave us the assurance that we were seeking, and there were no significant material issues or concerns or problems where we had to, follow through in any significant way. But it is an important part of the audit, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, in terms of getting those written assurances across some very important areas, which we do, across all our financial audits that we undertake. But nothing to report specifically from an Audit Wales perspective.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for that. That's very helpful. So I'll just open it up to members if they'd like to ask any questions. Joe Williams.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Mark, I just wanted to ask, when did you actually obtain these responses, please?
Yeah, off the top of my head, Mrs. Williams, I can't recall a specific date, but I can certainly provide to the clerk. It would have been at least a few weeks after the requested date, but that didn't cause us a problem. We were still undertaking the audit, and we were able to consider this in reasonably good time. But I can certainly drop the actual date to the clerk and record that as an action. I can do that later today after committee.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask a further question on this? So what I'm trying to get at, Mark, is did you obtain these responses before you carried out any substantive work on the audit? Roughly, so you.
Yeah, I mean, roughly, they would have been testing we had commenced. We commenced the audit in October. Therefore, work did commence in early October. So there would have been work undertaken pre-receipt of the reply, but the timing of it did not cause us a problem. From memory, it was after the date requested, but not by a significant margin. And I can provide the date later to the clerk, and that can be shared with the committee or and directly with yourself.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Does anyone else want to ask anything? Viv? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark, for clarifying that, because that was part of my question that I had. So on that basis, the fact that it's been submitted, it's gone through their external audit. There's a question for Leanne, actually. Could you set out the process that you follow prior to submitting the response? And I'd just like you to be aware that the response to question 16 isn't a response, it's a question, which confused me somewhat. And the Governance and Audit Committee needs to have assurance that you've got these processes well and truly buttoned down to make sure that the use of the external audit time is used for effective purposes rather than ineffective ones. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you, and thank you for the question in advance as well. So we went through a process of completing the response. It was done in conjunction with directors, the monitoring officer, and the audit manager, and it then also went to our leadership meeting where it was discussed in detail and approved by leadership before I submitted it to Audit Wales.
Thanks, Leanne. I'm glad to see there's a process. Was there a reason why question 16 wasn't answered appropriately?
No, it was just a typo. So there shouldn't have been a question mark on the end. Apologies.
Brilliant, thanks.
Okay. Nigel Yates.
Thank you, Chair.
Have you got your microphone on?
Thank you, Chair. The question is the same every year.
Sorry, Nigel.
I think that's a question for Audit Wales.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
These questions would be quite similar to the previous year and even possibly the year prior to that, but they do change. They can change and they do change, but I don't believe this question set has changed significantly in any way over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I was wondering that because you probably get the same answers every year, or you'd expect to get the same answers every year. If they were good, anyway.
Yeah, and the questions remaining as they are is in some ways an important part of the process. We have many conversations with officers, and we may take notes of those conversations. But ultimately, there are some really key questions that we need to ask formally every year. This, for example, was first picked up. Our audits get inspected every year, so sample of our audits are inspected annually. And this was a recommendation made to us probably about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And the recommendation to us was some of these key questions you have to make formally as a set of auditors, and that's kind of when this kicked in, and under the international standards on auditing. So it's a key requirement, but there are probably lots of questions in here that will be asked formally every year, but there will be subtle changes to those questions each year. Sometimes maybe significant changes.
Oh, thank you for that.
Okay. Councillor Chacken Dawson.
Sorry, I've got my report open set, and I've got to close one window to get to another window. My question was about the checks, because I've noticed that you've highlighted errors. Are there any checks that the accounts do before the audit picks up on these errors? Are these checked before, prior? Are there regular checks? I'd like to understand the system of how the audit keeps picking up with errors. Surely they should have been picked up before the audit.
Okay. Leanne, thank you.
Thanks. I think Councillor Dawson's question is on the next.
Agenda item 4. Yes, sorry. I've got the wrong agenda item. Okay.
Oh, and apologies for myself. Thank you, Leanne, for figuring that one out. Okay. Are there any other questions regarding agenda item 3? Joe.
I'm feeling quite to remember what happened in previous years. Maybe Mark can clarify. But I'm just slightly surprised that we're being asked to endorse this. And so why is that, please? Can you explain that?
I can come in on that from an audit perspective. Ultimately, the letter to be signed or kind of considered is by those charged with governance, which for this council is full council. Some councils, those charged with governance per their constitutions, is the Governance and Audit Committee or RAC. But it comes, it comes through this committee for consideration, and that's as kind of is asked by the council. It's healthy and it's good practice is one way of looking at it. Recently, for example, just talk hypothetically is a real example. Recently, a month or two back, the Blackwood Arts Centre 23-24 accounts, those charged with governance was the cabinet. Those accounts could have gone straight to cabinet. The cabinet felt it was a good process for those accounts to go through the GAC first. So then when they were considering it as those charged with governance, they knew that the Governance and Audit Committee had also looked at it. And this is probably, to say a similar example. Ultimately, this is for full council, but it's probably good, a good practice, healthy practice for this to come through the GAC first as part of the process, but that's a matter wholly for the council. Joe's point may be that actually this could have been more effective maybe if it was done at the previous GAC rather than today's GAC. Maybe that's not the point that Joe's making, but that might be an element of Joe's Mrs. Williams's question.
Yeah.
Chair, can I clarify, please? Mark, just to let you know as well, you're very you're not coming across very clearly in your with your mic there. But anyway, no. Right. What I'm asking about is the agenda item 3 here, the inquiries paper. Yeah, I'm not questioning about us endorsing the financial statements and the audit. I'm questioning this this bit.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying really is that I don't recall this having been come to us before for endorsement. That's all.
I think Leanne wants to say something as well, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. So historically, it hasn't come here, but on discussions with Mark from Audit Wales, he said it was good practice if it did come here as well. Like he said, ideally, it should come to a meeting prior to the accounts, but due to times we haven't been able to do that. But in future, I will get it scheduled so that it comes to GAC and full council at a meeting before the accounts come to one. But historically, Caerphilly have not brought it to GAC, but best practice suggests that it should come here.
Sorry, Chair, I'm afraid that answers are just leading to more questions. Sorry about this, but we really do need to be clear here. There's some content, and we've mentioned it already, some of us, in this inquiries report that we're questioning. And I have some of it that I'm questioning in relation to the further agenda items on the further items on the agenda. And so I'm just wondering, how do we deal with that then? Are we going to endorse this, subject to certain questions that may follow from us? Or how do we deal with that level of uncertainty, if you like, or questioning?
One point I'd make. I'll pass to officers on the essence of your question there. But this has come to the committee in one sense, and it is always in our audit report, and the audit report has always come to this committee before it goes to accounts. So anything in our audit report is open to question and challenged by the GAC members, and therefore this letter of rep has always come to this committee in the ISA 260 report. So I just wanted to make that point. But as for Joe's other question, I think that's more for officers.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to take any questions on the inquiries return, because like Mark said, it does form part of the audit and how they carried out their audit. So if you have questions on this, we can take them now, and then if it's questions on the financial statements, we will take them on when we get to the financial statements.
This is very drip, I'm afraid. Sorry about this. But really, the only thing is the questions are related. Obviously, there would be, the question that I would raise, one question that I would raise in relation to these inquiries and the responses relates to a question I have later. And it is about, as Councillor Chacken-Dawson mentioned already, it is about the level of error that the auditors found, etc., etc. So that relates to agenda item 4, I think. But there is a response from yourself in here to, item 7, for example. There's been a change in key finance leadership roles. Of course, we all know that. But you do say that it's mitigated, any risk there is mitigated by the significant experience of the new post holders and the strong continuity of knowledge. Now, my question is, and this is one of the reasons why I asked, when did you get this response? I'm assuming you got this response at a relatively early stage, before a lot of the errors and inaccuracies were uncovered. And so I want to ask Leanne, therefore, why is that different from the message, if you like, that we get later on agenda item 4?
So I get this was the response that we have to fill out, like you say, prior to the audit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of it says that were there any issues that could impact it. So obviously, because there was a change in section 151 officer, the chief accountant, and the senior accountant, that is significant in terms of for the preparation of the accounts. But how we've mitigated it is there is significant experience within the team, and I mean that has come through with the overall opinion of the accounts.
I think I would disagree with that final statement you made there. This is at variance with the impression I get from the audit and Appendix 2 in the later item on the agenda. I will accept that this was made, I'm sure, in good faith, before much audit work had taken place. So I can accept that. So I can accept it almost as if it was your expectation that, there would be this mitigation at play. But I don't think it was borne out. I don't think it's been borne out in what we see later. That's all I would say. And so that was why I'm asking the question about we're being asked to endorse these responses, endorse this letter of engagement, these items. And, I'm just not entirely comfortable with doing that unless we can voice some of our reservations around that. Chair, thank you. I'll leave it at that, I think.
Okay. Sorry, Leanne, you wanted to...
Yeah, so like you say, they were made at a point in time, but what I will say is it is an unqualified audit opinion. So it does mean that the financial statements present a true and fair view. Yes, there are recommendations in there, but ultimately, Audit Wales have given us an unqualified opinion on the statement of accounts. But like you say, in terms of the inquiries return, it was done at a point in time, and we will provide that date when we can.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just, before I bring others in, I mean, obviously, you've raised your reservations, your queries, and you're fully entitled to not endorse this report alongside everyone else that's fully entitled to endorse it. That's the process that we go through. Councillor Taylor, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Perhaps in future it would be better. It's difficult to actually endorse something so long after it's been submitted and obviously taken into account by Audit Wales. Perhaps in future it would be better if the committee was asked to endorse that prior to it being sent back to Audit Wales, rather than at the end of the process, because whether we endorse it or not today, it's already been used and is already there. So it makes no real difference endorsing it today or not.
Thank you. Leanne.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. And that is 100% what we will be doing in future.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Mark, you wanted to come back.
Thanks, Chair. Just one brief point. Last year's equivalent report, the 260 report, had 5 uncorrected misstatements as well. So it's not that it's deteriorated this year to 5. It was 5 last year. And if we took Appendix 2, I think it is long. I think it is longer than last year's, but last year's was long as well. With this year, it's a bit longer again. But last year's was long. But as the auditor, it's quite similar to last year in terms of what we were reporting. I wouldn't say that necessarily there's a deterioration. It's just at a very similar level to 23-24 accounts. So yes, there's been a change in key roles. The outcome being reported today is quite similar to last year's reporting.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman-Dawson.
I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but last year the mistakes weren't as material as this year.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that, but I just know there was 5 uncorrected misstatements last year. They might have been at a different value, maybe a lower value, but that's something I'd have to kind of look at the file.
Okay, thank you again, Mark. Any other questions, queries? Okay, thank you, everybody. So the recommendation is that the Governance and Audit Committee are asked to endorse the response appended to this report. Can someone move that, please?
I'm prepared to move that one, Chair. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. And someone to second?
My second, Chair. Nigel Yates.
Thank you. Okay, we'll put that to the vote. Okay, that's been carried. Thank you very much. And we go on to agenda item 4, financial statements 2024-2025. And we are being asked as the Governance and Audit Committee to receive and comment upon the Audit Wales Audit of Accounts report, and to recommend to Council that the 2024-25 audited financial accounts are approved at the meeting coming up on the 7th of April 2026. Leanne, am I correct that you're presenting this?
I'm happy to. So, like as you say, we're bringing the accounts here, and for you to see the Audit Wales accounts. The recommendations are that you receive and comment upon the Audit Wales Audit of Accounts report, and you recommend to Council that the 24-25 audited financial accounts are approved at its meeting on the 7th of April 26. And Audit Wales are online, and we're happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Audit Wales, Mark, do you need to say anything before I open it up to questions at all?
Yes, Chair. I'll say a few things, but I'll try to keep it short and sweet. and I'll take the audit report as read, but just emphasise some points. This report discharges our responsibility to report our findings to this committee before you make your recommendation to council members. But I think that was said earlier, so that everybody's aware of that. And the Auditor General is due or scheduled to certify on the 8th of April, should the accounts be approved and signed. The most important message really today is that the Auditor General intends to place an unqualified, that's a positive opinion on the 24-25 accounts, in that they are materially true and fair. And you'll find our audit certificate in page 100 in our report, but you'll also find it in the set of accounts. I think is at page 10, and it runs to page 13. So members have probably picked up on that. That's where our audit report sits within the accounts. The uncorrected misstatements we've covered, and we've covered schedule 2, which is the corrections. And it is a high level of correction, but it is set out for members so that the non-trivial corrections are kind of transparently reported to you as we do each year. The audit does remain open until the day of certification. So what do we check between now and then? What do we check between now and the 8th of April? We keep a review on media. A significant media article, for example, could be relevant to the 24-25 accounts to a material degree. So we keep that under review. The Section 151 officer is required on the 8th of April to confirm that that she would still sign the same set of accounts that would have been signed the day before on the 7th. So that's something that we can confirm. And we keep an eye on key documents such as any meetings and minutes of meetings between now and the 8th of April, in case there's something in there that could be significant to the 24-25 audit. The other thing that members need to be aware of is that we can receive objections from elections to items in the accounts, and that remains open until the 8th of April. So an elector within the borough could write to the Auditor General and raise something that we need to take account of and consider. So that could happen. I flag these points each year just so the GAC members are aware that yes, the audit fieldwork has been done, and we're saying here today we've done the audit, but there are elements that remain open right until the day of certification. Other than that, really, it was a case of thanking officers who assisted us throughout the audit, and that's largely finance officers, but it's certainly not solely finance officers. The valuer would be a key person, the head valuer, and various other staff, especially when we're testing samples of transactions and balances, which can ultimately lead us anywhere within the council and any officer within the council, and that does happen. And therefore, our thanks to staff who helped us undertake the audit. And I'll stop there, Chair, and myself and my colleagues are happy to take any questions on the report or the accounts.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you again, Mark, for that, and Leanne. Councillor Chacon Dawson.
I don't know if I need to restate the question I had earlier, but if you can remember it, could somebody answer that question that I asked earlier?
Useful if you could repeat the question, Councillor Chapman Dawson, please.
The question was, are there any checks in place to check the accounts for accuracy prior to the audit checking those accounts?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously we've got we go through when we're drawing up the draft accounts. There are lots of checks and balances in place, and we've got controls in place for all of this. I guess what I would say is, having come off the back of the last audit, because of the change in the timings to do it, we haven't had much time to have the time to make some of the improvements going into the final audit, and we'll find ourselves in a similar position now because we come off of this audit and we'll go straight into close down. So, I mean, Nick can probably give some examples of this in a minute, but what we've done is, as we've gone through, we are putting in improvements straight away and, putting in mitigating actions. So, yeah, there are checks and balances done. And when we do the draft, they do go through a review process. I don't know. Yeah, there definitely are.
Okay, that's reassuring. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark and Leanne, indeed. And I recognise as well, of course, because I've been on the other side of the counter on this myself, the hard work that goes on here to get to this point is arduous, absolutely. I wanted to ask a couple of factual questions, please, Mark. You state, not quite sure where this is stated, but anyway, your plan was to have the accounts actually signed off at the end of October, I believe. And now the Auditor General will be signing them off on the 6th of April, so some 5 months later, yeah? Can you just summarise for us then, and bearing in mind we have a lot of information in front of us, of course we have, but can you just summarise then the reasons for that delay? And the second question sort of associated with that really is, did you have to do, or did your team have to do a lot of extra work, a lot of extra field work because of it, or because of that delay? Was it associated with it? And of course, my last question is there any additional adjustment to the audit fee as a result of that? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Williams. Sorry, can you just repeat the first point you made? The first point you made, the first part of that.
The first is simply the fact of there's been a delay in signing off of some 5 months. And I wanted to understand, you've given us a lot of information and we can surmise why and we can see a lot of things, but I'd like you to summarise for us what's the story there as regards the reasons for that delay.
Yeah. For the recent years accounts, 23-24, 24-25 and 25-26, and it may have been 22-23, I can't quite recall, but the Audit Wales meets regularly with Society of Welsh Treasurers, for example, and so forth. But the one thing that we set for the LG sector in conjunction with Welsh Government, so that's the police, fire, parks, councils, is that accounts that are received by 30th of June with a full set of supporting working papers, those are audits that we start on receipt of the accounts 30th of June. And that applies for 25-26 as well, which is the year that we're heading into now in terms of audit. Trafilly's Council's 24-25 accounts were provided to us on the 29th of September 2025, and therefore it didn't make that commitment to doing the audit at the start of July, and we couldn't do that anyway, of course, because we didn't have the accounts. So that was the key factor was the 29th of September, and we've been asking Leanne about the plans for the 25-26 accounts. I'll be picking that conversation back up again in the next week, certainly the next week or two, in terms of the accounts plus all the supporting working papers, and therefore, if that's where the council is kind of going to achieve for 25-26, then we'd be looking to start that audit in July. So that's the key factor there. Sorry, Miss Williams, I didn't jot down your second point. I should have jotted it down. I know the third point was about cost, but I should have jotted down your second.
It's quite okay. I was asking you, did your team have to do additional work as a result of that delay and as a result of Appendix 2 detail, which we have, of course, in front of us, regarding, various issues, various problems. So I was wanting you to comment on that, please, at all. Yeah.
There has been extra work, quite a bit of extra work, and quite a bit of extra audit cost. I wouldn't associate that with the delay. If we'd received accounts on the 29th of September 2025, and they didn't have the issues that we have experienced, then that additional cost wouldn't be incurred. So it's not attributed to the delay. It's attributed to what we receive and then what we audit. And therefore, as reported in the report, that the adjustments, for example, there has been a significant amount of additional work. It hasn't just been due to issues like that, the level of work. The school valuations in the accounts shot up very significantly to the tune of hundreds of millions. So if you look at school valuations and you look at your 24-25 figures, 23-24 figures, and you look at your 24-25 figures, you will see that the valuation of schools increased significantly. That had a significant piece of audit work done on it. Quite a very significant piece of additional work, in that we gained assurance that very, very significant increase in value was materially true and fair, which we concluded after that work that it was materially true and fair. So that issue alone doesn't feature in your report because it doesn't really need to. But that was a significant piece of extended audit work in that area. But yes, there is extra cost, and we will be communicating that to officers, in due course. It also comes back to this committee, because when you consider the audit plan, which we're intending to bring to you, I believe your next. I think May is your next. I think May is your next meeting, I believe. So when we bring the audit plan to this committee, which is not far away now, you will see the fee estimate and the fee outturn. So I'm not in a position to give you a figure today, but you will see it at your next meeting in terms of estimate, outturn, and therefore, there's a chance at that committee to consider that at that point. I think that's your 3 points, Ms. Williams, but I appreciate you may have some follow-up.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. Yes, no, that does answer my question. In fact, you've even answered another question I had on the technical front regarding the revaluations. So that's good. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for that. Okay, Viv.
Thank you, Chair. It's following on from Marina Chacken-Dawson's question, I suppose. And we've heard that it's an unqualified situation that we find ourselves in, which is really good news for the authority going forward. However, my questions relate to the internal processes that we have here in the council. And as you know, this committee is here to assure the processes to make sure that the outcome is what we require. So each year since I've been on the committee, there have been errors and misstatements highlighted by Audit Wales. Some are corrected by the council and some are not. Where they are not corrected, the council obviously highlights the amount of work that would be required to rework those accounts, and I think that's very a moot point, isn't it, with going back through just for an administrative task. However, could you explain, and I've got several questions, I know I've given them to you in advance, so bear with me, why errors and misstatements are made in the first place and not picked up during your internal financial processes? What level of review is undertaken during the year? Is it just done at the end of the year, or is it done throughout the year? And what level of review is undertaken during the closing of accounts process specifically? And what improvements do you think you can make to eradicate these errors and misstatements going forward? And what feedback is provided to your staff working on accounts as a result of the identification of these errors and misstatements?
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. With regards to your first one on the errors and misstatements made and not picked up, some of the errors are down to interpretation as well. For example, this year there was a IFRS on leases, so it's officer's judgment. So you had to agree that with the auditors, and sometimes we disagreed. So it's just a matter of working through some points on that one. Your second question, what level of review is undertaken during the year? Like Leanne mentioned earlier, because we're rolling out of one audit into the year-end closing process, sometimes it's difficult to put corrections in place if there is a change for process. But this year, we've put some different budget monitoring processes in place to try and incorporate anything that was picked up during last year's audit so that it feeds through. So we're going to try and do that for this year. But again, we're already into the year end, so we try our best. What level of review is undertaken during the closing of accounts process? So there's an analytical review that we carry out between the balance sheet and the management accounts. It's at a high level, but it does sort of give us indications of where things have changed, and we look into them time allowed. And then what improvements can be made to eradicate those errors and misstatements? So this year was slightly unusual because you had the change in staff, and there was part of it where we didn't really have a member of staff, and it was hands on deck. So going forward, we should be a bit more up on that process. And then what feedback's provided for staff working on accounts as a result of the identification of errors and misstatements? We've got a workshop booked in to identify some points that have arisen during the audit, to talk to those, or to give a bit more guidance to those staff, so those points shouldn't be arising again going forward. I hope this answers your questions.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask a supplementary, Chair? Can you just take us through what that looks like in terms of when you say you may disagree in an interpretation? Can A, you give us an example, and B, what happens as a result of when you disagree?
I think one of them off the top of my head might have been an interest rate used to discount our lease repayments. But talking with audit, then they said no, it needs to be this one, and then they give you a recommendation, and then we've gone with the recommendation. It's a new standard. For example, with the leases, although you go on the courses, some leases are unique to particular councils and quite quirky, so you make a judgment. But Audit Wales has got that experience of going out and all other different local authorities, and they can say, right, okay, well, X, Y, and Z have used this, so we suggest this method. So that might be a reason for a change.
Thank you very much. And I presume that obviously when you go through that process, you do that correction. If it was something more significant and it needed reworking all the way through, you wouldn't do a correction?
I think with regards to leases this year, because it was so new and it was such a big area, although some of the recommendations we didn't have to do, we did do a lot of them because going forward it would build on it. So we did make a lot of those changes.
Thank you, Nicola.
Joe.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, if I may, dwell for a little while longer on this question that Viv has started to ask about, really. And Mark has mentioned the word issues. There have been issues during the audit, and indeed your update that we saw just this week, but that was received in December, mentioned that there were ongoing issues with the audit. So I want to hear about those issues from yourselves, please, Mark, in due course. But can I just ask the officers again about this question of the level, of inaccuracies and errors, and some that would seem to me, and I am a practitioner here, to be very quite basic errors. Errors of classification, for example. There are, in that Appendix 2, which is an 8-page appendix, there are references to there being several. Sorry, are you? Sorry, I just want to make sure you're tuning in. There are references to the word several is used a few times, so we're talking about several duplications, several errors of one sort or another. But these errors do come across, and of course this is why hopefully we have the unqualified opinion, these errors are coming across as quite basic, quite fundamental, but of course taking time then to get corrected, etc. There's lots of notes here that weren't accurate, that had to be changed. The notes to the accounts I'm talking there, and we're talking about 46 notes or something like that, and I think there was something like, well, I didn't count them, but there were at least 30 of those notes had faults of one sort or another picked up by the auditors. So just getting to the point, have you experienced then in your team, and accept everything about the changes in personnel and especially seniors, of course, but would you say that, the reasons for these errors is a matter of, is it a capacity problem, or has it been a capacity problem, or has it been a capability problem? I suppose I would like to know a little bit more about that. In other words, have you just not had enough staff, or have the skills of your staff not been at the right level, perhaps, for the work that they've had to do? Perhaps you could comment on that and give us a little bit more insight into the reasons here for why we're looking at what we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start as a overview, and then Nicola will go into some more of the detail for you. But I think broadly it's been more capacity. So we were carrying vacancies for a long time. So we've had that to deal with. We have now recruited to those, but it has meant that more has fallen on Nicola and her senior group accountant to do. So we haven't had that capacity to do it out. Obviously, it isn't just done by Nick's teams, it's across finance and actually across the council. I mean, it's across the council. So it's making sure that processes haven't changed and that all the controls are still in place. So I think it's been more capacity than skills. I think in terms of going forward, we're on training courses, aren't we? We're making sure that the people are being upskilled, particularly in references to the new financial accounting standards. So yeah, as an overview, I'd say capacity. But I guess, Nick, if you could give a couple more examples picking out from Appendix 2, maybe.
I think one of the things that comes out from there was the taxation and grant income, amendments to the different types of grants. Now that's not something that my team would be responsible for. It's something across the board that is accounted for. So this is one of the points that we're going to pick up in our training session that we've got, our workshop that we've got organised, is to explain that, for example, a government grant has to be coded to a specific analysis code, whereas where you've got changes in personnel and changes in personnel our side, that obviously went under the radar and is going under the radar maybe from their side where things haven't been passed on, and that way then, you can, that's just one of the examples where it's just an analysis code that was, quite a significant amount of adjustment there put through. That was one of the ones.
Sorry, Nicola, where is that in our Appendix 2, please? What
on
page?
page 24, taxation and grant income, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 down. Material amendments to capital grants and analysis disclosure. That's one of the ones.
Okay. I can't find it in Appendix 2, but never mind. I take your point. Did you have any systems problems, do you think? I mean, have your systems been... what system do you use? What's your main financial software?
Our main financial software is ABS.
Okay.
Yeah, the system probably would be more on the asset register, which we had a recommendation last year. So we are going to go out, but we're going to tie that in now. So, but like it says, it is more, I think, around making sure that we've got training, and because there has been a change in personnel and stuff, and making sure that people understand. So we've got the controls in place, but they still pick the code. So it's a case of making sure they realise how important that is. So we are going to run these workshops, and we're doing, what was the first one booked for? We've already got that in place, haven't we?
Yeah. I think the first workshop's booked in towards the end of April, beginning of May. And there's also coding review. We were going to do a coding review on the analysis codes to restrict them, to point them in the right direction. Then they have got less to choose from.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Diolch yn fawr. Any other questions at all? Oh.
Sorry, Mark, just to say, I did send in a couple of technical questions this morning, and I can go through those, of course, but when you're ready. I wasn't sure if we'd finished yet, really, and I would like to hear from Mark regarding the main issues he feels there have been from Audit Wales's perspective in the preparation of the accounts and the conduct of the audit, please.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Williams. I just jotted down some of the key areas in terms of where extended work was needed, as an example. It's not, I'll briefly mention the school's valuation that I mentioned earlier. That had a positive audit outcome. As I said, it's not in the audit report today specifically, but it did have a high level of extended audit work, particularly with the valuers. But beyond that as well, it was we cast the net quite wide on that one to get assurance on those movements on the school valuations. Capital commitments, that was problematic with some very big adjustments, but it took some time to get to the bottom of the capital commitments and to audit the records and arrive at capital commitments that we were content was true and fair. So therefore, extended testing. You find some errors sometimes, or quite often actually, you find some errors, but the question is, could this be a wider problem? That's the first question the auditor will often, especially with a set of accounts, maybe less so an internal auditor, maybe, but when it's a set of accounts, how wide could this problem be? Therefore, this will often turn into extended testing. So the capital commitments, the grants that's just been talked about, the income, the classification of income, the assertions, they're called audit assertions for accounts audits, whether I'm auditing Tesco or auditing this council, there are audit assertions that are mandated. And one of those audit assertions is classification. They need to be in the right classification. And that's under the International Standards on Audit, the ISAs. And what we were finding with the income was that they were being misclassified, as was touched on, in the last few minutes, within your income, within your category of income. And also those same classifications are used where you break down the debtors. So it's interlinked to debtors as well, the money that you're owed. So there's quite a bit of extended testing on those classifications of income stroke debtors. Related parties, there was some, that's got a very, very low materiality, £10,000 with a trivial level of £50. That was an area with extended testing. One of the assertions I was talking about earlier was completeness and accuracy, and with related parties we focus very much on completeness, what's not there. You can audit what's disclosed in a draft set of accounts, but often we're auditing what's not there rather than what is there, and therefore there's completeness there, and there were material adjustments to the related parties. Again, that's not a deterioration this year. If you read the last 2 or 3 or maybe 4 years of our ISA 260 reports, you'll see related parties in each of those reports. The assets under construction and additions, this is classification again. So when you build in an asset, when you build in a school, that goes into the assets under construction classification, and it'll move across to additions, typically when you open the school and it's operational. And we were finding, that's just an example, by the way, that's not what we found in terms of schools, I'm just giving an example. But what we found with the is that capital items and material capital items were being posted to additions when actually they were still being built. If there's still assets under construction. So again, the extended testing came into it, because we find an error, we don't correct the one error then move on. It's is there a wider issue here? Is there a wider error here? And that's a requirement on the auditor to consider what it means. What does this error mean? The city deal, I mean, this is a tough one for officers. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes on City Deal because it's technical and it's messy and it's hard. And when the Southeast Wales Corporate Joint Venture, or sorry, Joint Committee, the Southeast Wales Corporate Joint Committee for the City Deal that covers the 10 Southeast Wales councils, those are in recent years very late, and that puts councils in a difficult spot in preparing accounts, draft accounts, and then final accounts. So the City Deal figures have been very difficult to audit and probably even more difficult to prepare. It's a tough area for the preparer and for the auditor, and that was a significant piece of additional work. And then the leases and the new accounting standard. Health, central government, they brought in leases probably about 4 years ago. SIP gave a reprieve, if you like. So LG came to it probably about 4 years later, but that year was 24-25, and that's when it came in. So the leases was an area as well that you were doing for the first time, and it was being audited in terms of LG for the first time. And with the leases, you have to go to your opening position on the prior year figures and so forth. So it falls back into 23-24 to some extent. But that's an area where introduction of a new standard and significant audit going on there, and some issues as was touched on earlier. So those are the ones I jotted down. That's not exhaustive, but that's the kind of main ones. And if I've missed something particularly significant, Wacas or Morgan can possibly come in, but I think those are the key areas that stick in the mind. And if there was one I could personally avoid, I would probably, if I was the accountant or the auditor, I'd probably try and avoid the City Deal because that one was a bit of a beast. So yeah, that's a flavour of it in terms of the 24-25 accounts.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anything else you wanted to?
Not on that area. I think that's a very good summary. Thank you, Mark, indeed, for some of that. All I would say is, though, some of that, of course, would have been foreseen. Like the new accounting standard on leases, for example. I mean, you would have known that. You would have expected to be for that to take up quite a significant part of your work. No, but that is helpful to get your perspective on that. And at the same time, it is, of course, the most important thing is that your opinion has ended up being an unqualified opinion. So that is a result, and that's the result we all want, of course. So that is certainly welcome. Mark, I do have some technical questions, but I'll wait for you to reset us perhaps on the next sort of level of questioning.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I was going to say about the questions that Joe has emailed to yourself, but before we get into that, if you are able to give us an answer on that, I just wanted to, well, first of all, thank you all for everyone, Audit Wales, yourselves, finance team, senior management, for all the hard work that's had to go into this. But touching upon some of the things that have come about here, this particular audit has been squeezed time-wise, and you've had to, in inverted commas, make the best of it. You've raised things about, well, we are going to, make sure that, hopefully this doesn't happen again. You've mentioned training. I suppose I'm looking for assurance that, this time next year, do you think, and of course there could be things that are completely out of our control, but the things that are in our control, what we've been talking about here now, that, we won't be asking these same questions again, is the crux of what I basically asking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we have a robust timetable in place for this year end. We have said we will meet the 30th of June deadline. I am confident in the team and in their ability. The team have already been on training courses. We have a really good relationship with Audit Wales. You know that they do take the time to discuss these issues that they come up with us. We understand them, so it's not, you know, we get to the bottom of it and we come to the best solution and put it forward. We've been making those corrections as we go along. So we've already made, like Nick said, she's given examples of where we have put in actions already to stop them coming up again. We are rolling out training. We've got workshops booked. So yeah, I am confident, and I have complete confidence in the team. Actually, they are really dedicated, professional, and they have stayed professional throughout the whole audit. So yeah, I do have confidence. So
am I right in thinking that, in answer to what Mark was talking about, that they might be getting on with the audit far earlier than what we've done for this one now?
Yeah, I'll bring Mark in there because we haven't sat down and agreed when they'll be coming in to do the audit, but we will certainly be meeting the deadline so that they have the draft accounts.
Okay, thank you. Now, Joe, you asked those, you've said technical
questions. Yes. Well, we had a workshop, you may remember, in December, middle of December, and we agreed, at least I agreed, to flag up any questions that were technical in nature and that might need some research by officers, so that you would be more prepared with your answers. And I haven't actually got many technical questions, strangely enough. I was much more concerned with the, as Vivian's called it, the process behind the scenes and the outlook for the way forward, much more concerned with that than the technical side. Although my first question to the officers was about the revaluation amount, which was a large figure, 250 odd million. So the revaluation of the land and buildings asset in the accounts has been very significant. Mark has touched on it and has talked about the schools. My question to the officers was really, how was that figure spread across the land and buildings assets? And I think you're going to probably tell me schools, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that just and talk about then any other, I'm not quite sure, you see, what assets exactly are in that category. So you might want to just clarify that for us, please, first.
Thank you. And just to say thank you very much for having the technical questions in advance, because it does give the officers time to prepare. So it is well received. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Nick, though, to do the technical answers.
Okay, thank you. On note 22, the fixed asset note, underneath there is a, in conjunction with Audit Wales's recommendation, we put an extra bit of explanation in there as to why the valuations went up. And it does mention in there that the schools have gone up. The rebuild costs were extremely high, and consumer prices increased by in excess of 20%. So that gave us, when they revalue the schools on the modern equivalent asset basis, which we've got sort of very prime examples of that at the moment going on, it caused the valuers to preempt that in the valuations, and it is that you were right, is Mark touched on, it was the schools that went up. So does that answer your question?
Largely, yes. So the other assets in that category, which is described as land and buildings, what are they, and were they revalued as well?
We have a 5-year rolling programme. The standards, the guidance on the SIPFA Code of Practice now, we're changing that going forward for 2025-26 onwards. But we have a rolling basis of evaluation programme. So it would be various categories of assets that are being valued in that. So it could be, I don't know, you've got leisure centres, schools, office accommodation, although it's mainly just T penalty on that one. There are various categories. I mean, more happy to share the detailed categories if you so wish, but it is quite varied in the land and property.
And would there have been any, do you think, that would have been revalued downwards?
There's up and downward revaluations across that, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you specifically off the top of my head which assets went up or down.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be looking for the detail at all on that. I just wanted to get an impression of it and where did the largest amount fall. So that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Just a
second. Sorry, Mark. I have another technical question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then I'll follow up.
You'll want to wrap up. Yes, I know. My second question was about note 13 in the accounts, the financial assets and liabilities. I'd just like to know a little bit about the reasons for the significant changes there. There's a table at the start of that note which summarises the position, and there are two categories really, or two areas where there have been significant changes. The one is the short-term investments, and that has dropped actually from last year's figure at the end of last financial year to this of 60 million. And then there's the debtors figure. Sorry, I'm talking there about the amortised cost financial assets investment. And then the debtors figure also increased in fact by something like 28 million. And I wanted to know a little bit about the background to those two large changes. And I think I've said in my note to you that I had a look to see if I could, get some answers. But I would like you to perhaps just clarify what was going on there during the financial year 24-25. Thanks.
With regards to investments, the investments have gone down because instead of taking out borrowing, we used our internal funding. So we internally borrowed, hence during the year, at the year end, the investments were a lot lower. With regards to the debtors, when you carry out the further analysis, they've gone up. And when you go through to note 12, the analysis on there, capital grants have gone up, as have the revenue, but the revenue has gone up in the education side of things, the education grants. As to which grants they are, I won't know now, but I can get that information to you if you so wish.
Thanks very much. Yes, I was just interested in the capital grants increase there, which appears to be the Welsh Government capital grants increase, which is very significant. I was just interested in, was there just one large grant there, or were there a lot of different grants, or whatever? That kind of information, really.
Like Nick said, she can get you the detail, but overall we have had a lot more Welsh Government capital grants towards some major programmes within our schemes. So it's that, and they are claimed retrospectively, aren't they? So we have to evidence the spend and then claim them, which is why it's done at the year end. But yeah, we could give you a breakdown of those. But yeah, it would be probably linked to the capital programme more.
That would be welcome. Thank you for that. Okay. Just going back to the investments point a moment, though. So when you say we've not, therefore, placed the same level of funds in investments because we've used it internally in the council, so that has amounted to 60 million, then, has it? As much as that? It's a very large figure, isn't it? For the drop in the investment. I was wondering if it was also connected just with your cash needs at the end of the financial year. And then I was looking at the cash flow to see if there was any evidence there. And there is almost a 40 million receipt in the cash flow from investments. So these are big figures. Obviously, I wouldn't be asking about them if they weren't. And I was just trying to understand it, but I'm sure that this has all been audited, Mark, and that you're content with the financial instruments note. There was one thing in there, I'm sorry to bring this one up, on the City Deal item, the South East Wales analysis item, and you seem to be treating that as which way round is it? It's you're treating it. You've described it as part of the financial assets in that earlier table. You know your further analysis refers back to that, calls it financial assets, but of course they were non-financial assets. So I just got a bit. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I've misunderstood.
So can I take that question? I think maybe for future reference, when we consolidated in the City Deal, maybe not refer to it as non-financial assets because you've got non-financial liabilities down further. But when we go to, in further notes, we'll be more specific. So maybe we just have the SEWCJC reference under each of the categories. It may be a bit more sort of understandable to the reader then, and then there's more detail provided further on in the notes.
I'm just picking up something here that could be picked up by a member of the public. That's all, and we need to bear that in mind. That the public do need to be given a fair chance of understanding these accounts, and if there are small things like that, if you like, it is a small item maybe that confuse or that seem to be at variance, then I think it's just important we get to the bottom of those, because we don't want to have the integrity of the accounts undermined by small sort of items like that. Would be my only comment. Thank you. Thanks very much for your responses.
Thank you. Sorry, did you want to? No, fine. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that the questions that Viv Pearson and Joe Williams asked by emailing yourself, and I know you've answered them. Is there any way that can be included in the minutes of the meeting, just so that nothing is lost in terms of the questions and the answers?
Yeah, I mean, they have all been raised today. It's just that we were able to kind of go in and find them rather than have to go through the accounts in the meeting. Just makes it easier for us to provide the response. So I think we've provided full responses, but we have agreed to provide a bit of additional information which we've captured, and we'll circulate that to all members.
Yes, I think what Mark is asking, if I understand you right, is that should be included in the minutes of this meeting. Yeah, that should be included as part of the. It's almost as if, well, we're just talking about recording your responses, and it would be better if it comes from you in writing, rather than us having to try to summarise what you've said. That's the only point I would make.
Yeah,
is that okay?
Just so that it's nothing is lost.
Yes,
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I can provide written responses.
There's a record there, and because in the years now that I've been involved on the committee, there's been a couple of times where something's come up, and when we've looked back, it's been raised before, and I just want to make sure that there's a record of it. That's all. Thank you. Okay, well, diolch yn fawr pawb for that. So, going back to the recommendations that I read out at the beginning, I'll just do it again so we know what we're agreeing on. So we're being asked to receive and comment upon the Audit Wales Audit of Accounts report, and then to recommend to Council that the 2024-2025 audited financial accounts are approved at the meeting coming up on the 7th of April 2026. So can someone move that recommendation? Thank you, Joe. And seconded?
My second, Nigel Yates.
Oh, Nigel got there before Viv, but you can do it together, I don't mind. And so if you can vote on that. Okay, great. That's been carried unanimously. And that's over to you now, Leanne, and going forward to the full council meeting. So thank you again, Mark, for all of your questions and the team working with you. Okay. So that's the conclusion of the meeting. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending this afternoon's special Governance and Audit Committee. I declare the meeting closed. Members attending remotely, you may now hang up and pass capping.